All right, so this is the second video in our series on preparing for and succeeding in college level courses. If you tuned into our last video, it was about reading heavy courses and tips, strategies to be successful in those. Today we'll be focusing on science and math courses and some tips and tricks to make sure you're on the right track in those classes. This can be anything from physics, chemistry, biology, to your college algebra, calculus, and statistics courses for first and even second year students. Okay, so the material we'll be covering today is listed here. We are going to talk about what it looks like to find resources on campus and do some extra practice strategies that will help you in your math and science courses. After we talk about those, we're actually going to do an activity based on those resources and strategies you learn about to see that you understand and those things have kind of sunk in with you. Then we are going to do an extension activity to wrap up to talk about concept mapping and how to do it effectively. This is a skill that a lot of students talk to me about and say, this is something I think would be helpful, but I'm not quite sure how to do it. So we're going to talk about that today as well. So what's the point? Why are we choosing for math and science courses to focus on finding resources and finding specific extra practice strategies to help you? Well, there's some pretty grim statistics around first generation college students in these math and science courses. So for first generation students, the 6-year graduation rate is about 56%. That means just over half of first generation students that set off to go to college actually make it to their graduation. And this is for a number of reasons, but a lot of it is because these students are not academically prepared to succeed in a college environment. This is because they received low quality high school math and science classes. It's not about any fault of their own, but it's a fault of the education system that they were in high school. Another thing that happens is students get caught by their remedial math classes. So math classes, you have to test into a math class and then pass those math classes to advance into higher classes. A lot of first generation students get caught in these remedial math courses they have to take because they're missing a lot of basic skills. They end up failing them over and over again, and so they're not able to advance to higher math courses that would be needed for STEM majors. And at this point, students either drop out or change to a major that doesn't require math and science. We don't want this to happen to you. We want to provide you with options and solutions so you don't feel stuck and hopeless. So you can say, oh, I'm in this type of situation. I can go find a resource here, or I can employ this extra practice strategy so I can understand this material better. We don't want dropping out or changing your major away from something you really wanted to pursue to be your only option. Okay, so today we're giving you resources and strategies that you'll be able to use for your math and science courses if that's a place you end up struggling when you go to college. So first thing we're going to talk about is finding academic resources on campus. And we're going to talk about a few resources and what they offer. So first is your campus library. Libraries offer a lot of services that many students don't actually utilize. They offer writing help, researching help, and while those might not be necessarily super important for a math or science course, they also offer a really amazing place to spend dedicated study or work time. As a freshman, it's hard to not want to be in your dorm and be around your friends all the time and constantly engaging in that social environment. That sometimes you try to do homework in those environments and it's not as productive and you don't learn as much or retain as much when you try to study. Go hide in the library. The library is a great place where you can find a little hidden nook, a desk, a chair that you can sit and give your full 100% focus time to your work, which is ultimately the point of going to college, to further your learning. This is a big one. Tutoring center or tutorial services. All campuses offer this. I know many students have talked to me and said, I was scared to reach out to the tutoring center. I didn't think to reach out to the tutoring center, but when I eventually did, it made a huge difference. And so I'm going to show you really quick how easy it is to engage with your tutoring center. So I'm going to pull up, I'm just going to Google. I went to UMSL. When I Google UMSL Tutoring Center, it pops up super easily. I don't even need to navigate through the university website. I can just go straight to it. So obviously everything is virtual right now due to COVID. But if you look down at their services, you would go here as a student. And you can see the variety of tutoring options they have available for you. And you can even schedule right in here on the website. So UMSL offers two kind of basic options for tutoring. This first one, peer-to-peer tutoring, pairs you with a tutor and then gives you an individualized tutoring plan. This is good if you need assistance on a regular basis throughout the semester. So if you are kind of lacking some skills that you think you might need for a certain course, or you need just constant review over what you're learning in a class, peer-to-peer tutoring would be a good option. Otherwise, if you're just having trouble with one thing or you need some short-term assistance, walk-in tutoring is a great option. Okay, so all campuses have this as an option for you. They offer it in different formats and different ways, but look it up, use it if you are struggling. Next resource I have listed on here are graduate assistants / office hours. So at many universities, professors have graduate assistants. So that's folks that are pursuing a master's or doctoral degree in that subject, assisting them in teaching the course, okay? So graduate assistants will usually have office hours or study hours. It goes by a lot of different names where they are available for you to come in and ask questions. This is an awesome opportunity because a lot of students in their minds are like, I don't need to go do that. I'm going to skip it. It might come down to you getting one-on-one attention from an actual expert in that subject matter. So they can really help you understand and get down to the root of maybe what you're not getting and maybe what you need to work on to improve. If you go to a smaller university, this might not be available to you and there might not be graduate assistants for every class that you take. But in place of that, your professor is there and all professors have office hours. So going to your professor with something specific you don't understand or a problem that you're having trouble solving is a great opportunity, again, for you to get help from an expert in that field and also just make a personal connection with the person that's teaching the course and then also ultimately giving you your grade. And then the last resource I want to talk about might not be something that immediately comes to mind as a resource, but your peers, okay? You'll be in classes with other folks. You might not know them, but get to know them. Having a study group with people that are in the same class as you and as you are in your major, folks that are in the same major as you are awesome. You guys can hold each other accountable. You can talk through really difficult subjects. You can offer each other advice. And it's really a great support group as well as an academic resource to help you really foster your understanding for what you're learning. So tutoring was a big one that I talked about, and I want to touch really quickly on what tutors do and how they help. So tutors typically help you troubleshoot something really specific that you don't understand. They want you to come in and say, I'm really not understanding this, this, and this. They don't want you to come in and be like, I don't understand algebra, okay? They're not going to be able to have the time or space to reteach you an entire lesson or a full concept. Come in with really directed things that you need help with. They're going to mostly, in that, work through the material with you and kind of guide you to the answers. They're not going to show you how to do it or do it for you. They're going to want you to kind of learn and go through the process on your own, and they'll be there to kind of show you and guide the way. Additionally, most tutors are going to not help you directly with your graded assignments like homework or if you have a take-home quiz, things like that. Tutors are most likely going to say, okay, you're struggling with this type of problem. Let's do some examples. And then you can apply that knowledge that you work on through those examples to your graded assignment. They're not going to physically help you do your graded assignment. So when going into a tutor, it's important to remember 3 things. Come in with a specific topic that you want to cover. Remember that they're not going to give you any answers. They're going to guide you and ask you questions to help you understand and get to a deeper knowledge of whatever you're struggling with. And 3, remember they're not going to help you with your graded work. They're most likely going to work through examples with you, just so you're not surprised when you go in and you know what to expect. Okay, now that we've talked about resources, I want to talk about a few extra practice strategies. Sometimes it's not always the best to go to a tutor or go to your professor's office hours. Sometimes you just need to put in the extra work yourself, practice things over and over again to make sure you really get and understand it. Okay. You have the knowledge, you just need to work on it a little bit more. I divided our strategies into two sections: pre-work practice and refresh practice. So pre-work practice is things, strategies that you can do ahead of time in order to prepare for tests, quizzes, and even prepare for lectures when the professor is going to be teaching whatever the subject is they're covering for that day. So first one says, make a list of formulas or terms used throughout a chapter. This is a really good one for both math and science courses, because as you go through and you're learning material, you're making a list of everything that's covered, that's important, that the professor touches on, and you know when to study. You know when it's time to study, what to actually cover and what to actually make sure you know. It's like pre-creating a study guide for yourself as you go throughout the chapter. This is one that's really good for math. Keep a list of most challenging problems solved in homework or class. So star those problems on your homework that were the most challenging, or the ones that the professors worked out for you in class that were challenging. Then those are the problems you actually use to study for your test, because you know if you can go back and redo the most challenging types of problems, you'll be good to solve all the types of problems that will appear on your test. Third on here, preview the chapter being lectured on before class, define new vocabulary, and find videos. This one is more for a science class. So science has a lot of vocabulary. Professors, lecturers tend to be really quick and they move through things really fast. Before you go into that lecture, know what they're going to be talking about so you're not caught up on what a certain word means, and then you end up missing, 15 minutes of what the professor talked about. Go through, define all the vocabulary, have that sitting on your desk when you're in lecture so you can use it as a reference sheet. And even go beyond that, if you're still having trouble understanding a concept, find a video. Sometimes getting a different perspective to explain it to you can be really beneficial. And then the last one here is an extra practice strategy, is more for math. It says use notes to write out step-by-step directions to solve certain problems. Use them when you're stuck. So as a professor teaches you how to do a certain math problem, or as you're doing math problems on your own for homework, write out the steps you're doing to solve. That way you kind of have a guide when problems get more challenging to go back to and say, did I do this? Did I do this step? Did I do this step? And at that point, if you're still not understanding, that's the point when you would go and seek out a resource, maybe go to a tutor, maybe go to the professor's office hours and get help. Okay, so it's kind of a step before seeking out a resource. The next type of strategies are refresh practice. So these are typically strategies that you would do to refresh, re-go over content that you need to know for an upcoming test, assessment, quiz, anything like that. So first is ask the professor for answer keys for past quizzes, rework the problems, and check yourself. So if you have a big test or quiz coming up in a math class or even a science class, ask your professor if they're willing to give you a previous answer key so you can go through and practice those types of problems. And once you practice those types of problems, you'll be prepared for what's coming up on the test. Reread the chapter before a test and take new notes, compare them to your old notes. So this is more for a science course. It's a really big way to kind of big picture review everything, to go back through everything you've learned, take new notes with kind of fresh eyes, and then compare your notes page by page, side by side, and see if anything else stuck out to you, or maybe now that you've moved through the course, you have a better understanding of something that you didn't have as much understanding of before, and kind of try to connect what it was that made you understand, or what connections happened to make you get a better understanding of what was happening. Next strategy, take your notes and book and create concept maps to connect ideas from lecture to the textbook. So this is what we're going to talk about at the end of our video today, It's all about taking your resources from what you learned in lecture and combining it with additional information that you might find in the textbook. This is going to be most helpful for science courses, but it's also something that could be used in other subjects as well, like history, sociology, psychology, courses like that. And then finally, if you haven't caught on to the common theme for math, the big thing to do to refresh is to do practice problems. It's not good enough, I can promise you now, to study for any test for math by just skimming back through your notes or looking back over the book. You need to look in your book, rework your homework, and even maybe ask the professor for suggestions for practice problems. You'll find in college, professors aren't going to give you study guides and say, if you can do all these problems, you'll pass the test. They expect you to create your own and really be in control of making sure you know what you've learned and how to apply it on an assessment, okay? So do practice problems. Always reach out to your professor if you're having trouble finding problems to prepare for the test. They most likely will be very willing to provide you with those or direct you in the way that you can find those. Okay, so now that we've talked about all these strategies and all those resources, we are going to do an activity. We're going to look at 5 different situations that are common for students in college math and science courses in their first year and even in their second year. Some of these really might kind of stick out to you and you'd be like, whoa, that's me. Okay, so you're going to read the situation and you're going to decide whether, okay, is this a situation where I should use a campus academic resource, or is this a situation where I should do some extra practice? Okay, I'm going to prompt you to pause the video between each situation so you can think about your choice, research first, practice. And then after you pick research or practice, I'm going to have you pick from a list of strategies and resources to help you work through that situation. And this list that we'll be choosing from pulls from the resources and strategies that we just got through talking about. Okay, situation 1, you go to math class every week and take notes in class. You even take time to watch videos when you have a hard time understanding some of the topics. When you're doing your math homework this week, you keep getting stuck. You've tried revisiting notes and watching videos, but you still can't make it through a problem. Okay, so think about it. Is this a situation where the student would need to do some extra practice on their own to get better in their math class? Or is this a situation where they would need to find a resource? Go ahead and pause the video and decide what your choice would be. All right. In this case, it's best to find a resource. So go ahead now. Pick which solution would work best. So we're going to go with a resource here. Read through this matrix and look at all your choices and decide which of these solutions would be the best resource to use in this situation. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, take as much time as you need. All right. The resource would be to visit your professor's office hours or sign up for a tutoring time at student services or use a TA from your class. Another big part of this would be to target what part of the problems you're working on. Remember what we talked about in tutoring, it's really important to go to the tutor or to your professor and say, this is what I'm not actually getting, rather than just being like, I don't get it, okay? So come with a direct part of the problem or situation that you want to work through, and they should be able to help you. So that's a great use of a resource there. All right, situation 2, you're sitting in biology class. You're trying to keep up with your professor, but he's using words and terms you're not familiar with. Sometimes it's also hard to catch every word he says because you're trying to take notes quickly. English is not his first language. All right, go ahead and pause the video. Is this a situation where you would need extra practice or seek out a resource? All right, this is an extra practice situation. So we're not going to seek out a resource here. There's obviously something we can do on our own to help us better understand what's happening in biology. So go ahead and look through this list of options. Pause if you need extra time. All right, our solution here is to preview the chapter before class and write down any new vocabulary, and even we'll try to watch short videos on the subject. So you need to come to class a little bit more prepared in this situation. So even though the professor is moving quickly and you're not understanding everything they are saying, you come in with a good understanding of what they're going to talk about for the day. From that point, if there are still things that you don't understand, that might be a point to go talk to the professor at office hours or seek out tutoring services. But this is something you can do on your own first to see if it will make a difference. All right, situation 3, your math class has a quiz every 2 weeks. You attend class, take notes, and do the homework every week. Good job. You review your notes in the morning before quizzes. Despite that, you keep failing the biweekly quizzes. So this person is doing everything they need to. They even take a minute to review the quizzes, their notes before quizzes. So is this find a resource or is this extra practice? Pause if you need a second. So this would be an extra practice situation. There's obviously something else you can be doing in addition to what you're already doing to help you be more successful in the class. So again, look over our list of potential solutions. Try to pick one that's different every time, just to try to really zero in on what the solution could be. Pause if you need a moment to decide. All right, this one is take time to do practice problems from your homework. You can even suggest a professor, you can even ask your professor to suggest some practice problems for you since they are the ones making the quiz. So this is a really great opportunity for you to do more practice, okay? You do everything right, but what you are missing is extra practice before those quizzes happen. Looking over your notes is not going to be good enough. Rework some problems from your notes, rework some problems from your homework. That's what's ultimately going to give you the practice to prove to yourself that you know what you're doing when that quiz comes. Okay. Situation 4. It's time for your second chemistry class. You get a D on the first test and need to do significantly better on this test since tests are 60% of your grade in the course. Yikes. Before the last test, you studied for 3 evenings by rereading your notes and doing some practice problems and reviewing the key terms from your textbook. You're desperate to get a better score. What should you do? Okay, pause if you need a second to decide. This is seek out a resource, okay? You've kind of done everything you need to do. You reread your notes, you did practice problems, you reviewed key terms last time. So you need somebody that's going to help you study or somebody that's going to kind of guide you in that process of preparing for your next test. So go ahead, pick what solution would be best. Try to pick one that you haven't picked before and go ahead and pause the video if you need an extra moment to decide. All right, this one's going to be find a study buddy. So if you really feel like you've done everything you can on your own to study, this is a great time to form a group of your peers, maybe even one other person that's in your class, and get together, discuss topics, quiz one another. Make sure you guys really understand and know all the different parts and hold each other accountable to knowing and understanding all the different parts. That way you can go into the test with confidence that if you were able to explain it and understand it with your study buddy, then you're going to be able to explain it when you take that test. All right, final scenario. You have your first test in math class. It's over the first 10 chapters, which is a lot of material. You know you need to do well since there are only 3 tests in the class and none of them are dropped. In high school, your teacher always gave you a study guide with practice problems. This time you don't have one, okay? So pause if you need a second to decide. All right, this is extra practice. You definitely need to do practice problems to prepare for this test. But let's see if there is a specific practice strategy we can use from our matrix here. Pause if you need a second. All right, so here we're using one of our kind of pre-strategies. As you go through the chapter, you should keep a list of formulas that you've used and also make a list of challenging problems from your homework or from class, and then use those as your practice problems that you can go back and solve. You obviously can find more practice problems by Googling the types of problems you're solving, looking in the book, or even asking your professor for sample problems. But the key here is to practice, practice, practice. All right, so the next part of this video is going to be a segment on how to use concept maps effectively to learn and understand material. So if you are not going to keep watching for that part of the video, I just wanted to offer you this in closing. College courses can definitely be overwhelming, even for the most prepared student. So when you're in that place where you're feeling overwhelmed and you feel like you're not going to be able to pass a course or get through something, try and target what's actually happening. See if you could benefit from seeking out a resource to help you, or even using some of the additional practice strategies. Use them whenever you can. And if you're worried or unsure about reaching out to a specific resource on campus, like the tutoring services or a professor, ask your coach for advice. They would be happy to help you draft an email or figure out how to access tutoring. So be sure to reach out. These resources are to help you be successful on your college campus. We know you're capable of it. We just want you to know that these are the things, these resources, these extra practice strategies can be what make a difference in helping you feel successful. So stay tuned if you're willing. We are going to talk about concept maps next. Okay, so we are going to talk about how to concept map effectively. I offer this as a strategy a lot for students that have trouble connecting ideas and making sense of all the material they've learned from a certain section or chapter. And when I tell students, oh, make a concept map, I often hear them saying, I don't know where to start, or I don't know how to make connections within the material. They say it's too consuming, sometimes time consuming, and they make too many mistakes. And so it's just like really frustrating to have to erase and redraw lines and all of that stuff. So today I kind of want to show you a model of how I would create an effective concept map. And it's all about these 3 steps. So the first step we're going to talk about is getting down key vocabulary that comes across your notes and your book, or key concepts that come across your notes and your book. And then also skim through your book and your notes to see where they match up. So we'll kind of model that step and what that looks like. And then if there's any additional information from your textbook that leads into the material from your notes, it's important to add that as well, because professors can take things from the lecture and from the textbook, and you want to make sure you know both. The third thing is we're going to continue to connect new material back to the material we had at the beginning. So that's the whole purpose of concept maps, is to try to keep connecting as we add on. Okay, so I might connect more than one thing together, and I'm hoping to connect things as we add them all the way back to the beginning. And additionally, like, write words on the lines that kind of tell you how they connect and why they work. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so the main two materials you will need for doing your concept mapping will be both your lecture notes. So here are the notes that I took in class for chapter 13, as well as your textbook. So here's chapter 13. We are going to be kind of simulating this today with biology. I think this strategy works for all science courses, as well as, like I said at the beginning, like history and psychology, sociology courses as well. Anything where ideas build on each other, this is a great thing to use, okay? So you've got my two resources here that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to introduce you to my third resource. This is a site called Creately. It's a web-based app, and it's also an app that you can get on your phone. I have the free version. It's a really nice tool to use to create concept maps. The free version only allows you to have 3 concept maps, I believe, but what I've been doing is like creating my concept map, screenshotting it to keep for myself, and then just deleting it and making new ones as I need to. Kind of a nice little loophole. Okay, so I'm going to be using this program to make my concept map today. So you'll see I've already kind of got my key terms that I need to include in my concept map. I got these from both skimming through the text and as well as pulling them out from like the headings and things that I underlined in my notes. Okay, so let's kind of get into it. The first thing you kind of need to do after you figure out what vocabulary you want to include is to look through your notes and your book and kind of see where they start to match up. So my notes from class start at modes of reproduction. They talk about asexual and sexual reproduction. So if I look through my text, they're not talking about sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction until here. So that tells me that there is some material at the beginning that's more introductory and review that I should probably include in order to make sure I have a basic understanding and that I can connect new ideas back to these old ones that I already know. All right, so transmission of traits from one generation to another is called heredity. I have heredity here. I've already defined it. This is where I'm going to start my concept map. So heredity is traits passed from your parents. I knew that from high school biology, so that's good. As we keep reading, we learned about variation, we learned about genetics. I'm not going to get so much into this because it's not the focus of this chapter. And then I get to genes, okay? Parents endow their offspring with coded information in the form of heredity units called genes. Okay, so genes, heredity. Heredity is how genes get passed on. So I'm going to go ahead and get my genes vocabulary here, and I am going to connect these two. Just like that. Okay, pretty simple. Let's keep reading. We inherit our genes from our mothers and fathers. Our genes program the specific traits as we develop from fertilized eggs. Transmission of hereditary traits has molecular basis in replication of DNA. In animals and plants, reproductive cells called gametes are the vehicles that transmit genes. So gametes are directly connected to genes. Genes was the last thing that I put on my concept map. So I'm trying to find something that directly connects to it. It looks like gametes do because gametes transmit genes from one generation to the next. So, oops, let's add a connector. And let's make a new little bubble. Just drag it onto the screen, it's super easy. And I'm gonna put gametes in here. And then I can also type on the line if I want to. So I can tell that heredity is passed on through genes, and then genes are passed to offspring by gametes. I added those words just so I can remember how they are connected. And then I'm trying to find next what can connect to gametes. Male and female gametes, sperm and eggs unite, passing on genes from both parents of their offspring. So male and female gametes are sperm and egg. That's the next thing that connects to gametes. So I'm going to go ahead and add 2 little circles. And the nice thing is you can copy and paste if you want 2 of the same size. And then I will connect these together. And then I remember it said, whoa, sperm and eggs unite, passing on genes to both parents of their offspring. So then sperm and egg then go and connect to offspring. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little circle for offspring. And you can color code these and do all sorts of crazy stuff. Like if you wanted to make the sperm red and the egg blue and then make the offspring purple to show that they come together. It just depends on, you know, what works for you, if you like visual things like that. You can also change the shape of the lines just to make it more clear, make more sense to you. Okay. So then we get into some stuff about somatic cells and locus, but those don't seem to be super connected to the offsprings. So we're going to keep going. And actually, this is where my textbook starts to match up with my notes. Okay, so I'm going to kind of defer to my notes and pull information from here and then go back and see if there's anything that I need to add. Okay, so 2 types of reproduction, asexual and sexual. Let's get that into our table or our concept map. I don't know why I call it a table. So asexual. And again, this is a great copy and paste time. So I'm just deleting one letter. And sexual are 2 types of reproduction. I'm putting them here, but I can always move them, but I want to try and connect these back to what I've already done. So we're keeping that in mind as we go along. And let me go to my notes. So let's do asexual first. Genetically identical offspring to each other and the parent. It's meiotic cell division, parent splits, and it's quick and efficient. So let's get all that down. Do an oval. Offspring identical to parent. And it said, what else did it say? It's meiotic cell division and it's quick and efficient. So meiotic cell division, that must be mitosis. So we can connect one of these words that I put here. So identical to offspring. Meiotic. I think we also said it was quick and efficient. So let's add one more. Okay, so now that we've kind of gotten everything from our notes, now's the time we want to go back to the book. And as I skim through here, Meiotic cell division, that was in my notes. Copy, DNA is copied. Yep, chip off the old block, genetically identical to the parent. An individual that reproduces asexually gives rise to a clone. Okay, I think that's important to include because that wasn't in my notes. And clone is one of the words I wanted to include. So asexual reproduction is cloning, essentially, because the offspring is genetically identical to the parent. Bam. So those are connected there. In asexual reproduction, is there any way we can connect it back here? In asexual reproduction, let's see. So it's still talking about genetic copies. So genes are still being passed on from the parent. So we can actually connect asexual back to genes, because even though it's not this same process, genes are still being passed on to the offspring, okay? And heredity is also still happening. Okay, so we can connect back to genes, which connects back to heredity. Okay. Next in my notes is sexual reproduction. Okay, so let's look. It says sex cells, gametes. That sounds familiar. Fuse together to form a new single cell. Each gamete comes from a different individual organism, egg, sperm. It's genetic recombination. So it's not exactly the same as the parent. Okay. So sexual, we can actually reconnect back to this whole situation with gametes, okay? And we also saw in our notes that sexual, has genetic variation. So that's a characteristic of sexual we want to put in there. And then let's see if there's anything else from our notes. Okay, so it talks about chromosomes. What are chromosomes? Let's see if we get anything with chromosomes here. The key behavior is chromosomes during the sexual life cycle. Okay. Okay. We've consumed by stirring common smaxes and gametes. Okay, so if we continue to read through this section, we get to what chromosomes are. Chromosomes of each pair carry genes controlling the same inherited characters. So genes are also involved in sexual reproduction. And genes are passed off in sexual reproduction through chromosomes. So we want to make sure we connect genes to sexual as well. And we are going to put a little note for ourselves. Passed on through chromosomes. All right. So that's just kind of a basic way to get your concept map started. You are using your notes in your book next to each other. You are trying to connect each thing that you add your concept map back to the thing before it or back to things that happened previously, just like we did here. And you're continuing to add in and make sure you can manipulate key vocabulary and key points into your concept map. All right. I hope this was a helpful addition to this video. Try this out for yourself. Try this creatively, and hopefully concept maps will be a nice new way for you to study and learn.